Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Log Talk with Pertnear Outdoors. And I think we're going to call this one episode 61. So excited to bring this discussion to you. And first, like we always do, let's run through some updates and some things we got going on. So most importantly, it is Sunday. I'm recording this about 9:30, quarter to 10 on Sunday the 13th. It is the home opener for the Buffalo Bills, and we're very excited to see what this season brings. So go Bills, kick some ass today, boys. Hope when you listen to this on Monday morning, the 14th, we are 1-0 and headed into week 2. So very excited for the football season we've got coming up here. Big part of our fall and our fall traditions here in Western New York. So we've got that. An update on the beer. If you've been following along with us, last Monday night, we brewed our beer over at, got it brewed, and it is fermenting as we speak over at Windy Brew here in Sheldon. So we are brewing a beer, and we've been requesting some input from the listeners and our followers out there for a name of the beer, and we are going to do a Instagram poll. Hopefully today, at some point, Danny, my brother, and I will be narrowing the list down. We've got quite a few names, probably 15 or 20 different names that all of you have sent in, some really good ones, some that are fun, and some that are fun and also relate to the podcast and to what we're up to here, and some actually some pretty good ones that show me that you guys are out there paying attention. So kudos to you, and look forward to narrowing that down to 4 names, and then we'll do an Instagram poll, kind of like a 2-round deal. So we'll do 1v1, and then probably do that tomorrow, and then on Tuesday we'll do a championship decision of the of who will win the naming of our beer that we will be dropping on the 30th of this month of September. So keep following along with us there. We'll keep updating what is happening and what we're doing, but that will all be done within the Instagram story on our Instagram page. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Thanks again for your participation. And according to the folks over at Windy Brew, it is a very active and well, I guess active beer. It's blowing up all over their fermenting room. So I apologize for that, Windy Brew. All right, so that's that. Quick update on the virtual Learn to Hunt series that we're doing over at New York BHA. So this month, as I've talked about, each Thursday night we're doing a series. We've had a series this month, but we're doing a live Skype video that we're broadcasting on Facebook. And last week I had the opportunity to participate, and I will be again this week. Last week was talking about, so you found an area you want to hunt. How do you figure out where to set up, and what do you do? So if you are new to hunting, I really recommend it. The first two weeks have been great. Some of the discussion was awesome. Somebody who's been hunting my whole life, I learned something from each discussion. So I took things away, and I'm sure you would as well. So you can either go over and watch those on the Facebook pages, or they're actually loading the videos up on the BHA, the main Backcountry Hunters and Anglers YouTube page, and they've created a channel for the New York chapter, and or a playlist, I guess it'd be, and you can actually go to the playlist and see those videos there and watch them online in that manner as well. So you can watch them on your smart TV or on your cell phone or on a computer. So lots of different ways you can catch up on that. This week we will be talking about making the shot, so everything leading up to and pulling the trigger, and then what to do immediately after. And then the final week will be, you got your game on the ground. What do you do with it from there? So I think these next 2 weeks will be really good. We're working through putting the program together then over the next couple days, and really look forward to bringing that information to you and having some good Q&A and dialogue with that. So thanks out there for everybody who's participating and for everybody who's putting the effort in to put that together. I think it's been a great little series to help people get started this fall and to have success. So next, we are going to be getting our hunting season started in 2 weekends. So not next weekend, but the weekend after, we'll be going up for our annual family bear hunt to the Adirondacks. I don't know. I should ask my dad how many years this has actually been, but for the Harveys, this is quite the tradition, started by my grandfather and his friends. So I think it goes back, 35 or 40 years. they've been doing this. So it's a very special thing to us, and this year we're really excited. Brian, Danny, and I, we didn't get to do our Western trip this year, so we are all kind of yearning for a little bit of an adventure. So I think the three of us are going to venture off and do a little backpack, a couple nights in a tent, and get off the trail and stay out there instead of, hiking out in the morning and hiking back in the evening and then driving back to my uncle's place to spend the night. So we'll probably do that for a couple days, and excited for what the season might bring. Uncle Tim was up doing a little scouting in our normal hunting area last weekend and saw 4 bears on his walk, which is, if you're used to being out in the woods, seeing bears is very rare anyway, and then to see multiple bears is quite amazing. So I guess the cherry production this year has been great, and the bears are just pounding the cherries right now. So hopefully there's some of them still kicking around. And I sent some messages out on some Facebook groups to see what people recommended if the cherries are dried up and all eaten and gone, what to do. So a bunch of people gave me some input on focusing on beech nut and maybe even some low-lying areas near some bogs, which are kind of obvious areas to focus on. But we are excited to get out there and just have a little adventure in a little bit of a new area and see if we can put a bear on the ground. So that's that. I'm sure we'll keep you all updated there. Update on the hats. We've got our hat order has been in for a little over a month, so I suspect they should be in soon. I did put the hats, the mock-ups of the hats on our webpage. So if you want to check out what they're going to look like, we got 2 different hats coming. We got limited quantities of them, so I figured I'd throw them up there for a pre-order. Anyone who orders a hat on the pre-order will get free shipping. So I'll make sure that's programmed in before this drops tomorrow morning, so that if you do want to order a hat ahead of time, you will automatically get free shipping. So we'll do that. Lastly, before I talk about what this episode is going to be, is if you'd like to support the podcast financially, right now the best way to do that is to use the links that link to our affiliate programs that we have with a bunch of different stores. So if you go to our, there's a link tree in our bio on both Facebook and Instagram, and you'll see a bunch of the different stores that are in there where you can do some shopping, and a percentage of your purchase will automatically give us a little commission. So we've been doing better and better with that each month, and it helps significantly to cover the cost of the podcast and everything we're doing over here. So thank you so much, everybody, for that. And here we go into this week's discussion. I had a fun one with my dad. Him and I have never, for the podcast, hadn't sat down and just the two of us had a discussion. So we had a fun chat 2-3 weeks ago at his house out on the back deck. It was a beautiful night, and we sat down and had a couple drinks, and kids were in bed, and we just shot the shit. So we talked a little bit about what his life's been like throughout this whole COVID time. And we talked about some good deer stories. He asked me if I'd ever been scared by a buck, and that led to a conversation about a pretty wild experience he had. And most importantly, and what will be the title of this podcast, will be the blind. So my dad, almost all of his biggest bucks he shot, his record book bucks, were all shot in the same spot. And it was a ground blind that he just made out of logs, and had success year after year after year putting big bucks on the ground. So I'm going to leave that there and kind of tease that a little bit. I think this will be a great learning episode for someone who, just with that portion of this discussion, don't think you need to spend a ton of money on all the tree stands and everything like that. It's awesome to have those things, but you can go in the woods, find a topographical feature on a map, go in there and make a ground blind or just sit against a tree, and you can have an extremely good hunt. So let's enjoy this discussion. Thanks again for joining us. Go Bills, and keep feeding them.
Hello.
Yeah, that's your
Yeah.
name.
Squirrels got me.
Big Jim.
Yeah.
Really, 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 really cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
that's good that you think that of it, because that's what deer hunting typically is cold and fun.
Yesterday morning, I'm glassing up on the pass, and I see these deer moving, and I'm like, ooh, there's deer moving. All of a sudden, I just see this person just head down, just hauling ass, wearing shorts and a t-shirt with a pack on. And I'm like, is that Tard? My dad always talks about floating through the woods like the autumn breeze.
So Robert's
when you're
the
275 pounds, I don't know how you do that, but
the Freightliner. It's just like a creeper. You're just kind of up in the corner watching what's going on down there.
Yeah.
You know.
He's like,
he's up there slapping it, pissing all over everything.
Is it warm yet?
How did you know the name of the actor? That's right. I know. Why did you say his name? Hervé Villechaize.
You know what Pertnear means.
If you know what Pertnear means and you live in America, you're a redneck too.
Welcome to the Log Talk Podcast, brought to you by Pertnear Outdoors.
Test, check. You hear me all right?
Are you testing?
Yeah, test 1, 2.
Testing sounds great.
I'm going to turn you down. You sound like loud and annoying.
Loud and annoying.
Wait a minute.
Oh.
Give me a check.
Check.
All right.
Check
good.
mic
That's
1,
right
2.
where I want you.
Is this thing on? It's about to be.
I would ask you when we're going to go live. Give me a signal, but I know you probably already made us live. You do that to me all the time.
I know. It's more fun that way. It's more organic. You know what I mean?
It is more organic.
So what's happening, Big Willy? What's that? You got show notes. I was wondering what you were hunting and pecking over there with your single digit, finger texting.
Well, just tidbits that we could refer to if the conversation goes dry,
I doubt that would happen.
I doubt that would happen with the two of us.
I know. It's actually kind of nice to sit down and put the headsets on, because then we're not half distracted with cell phones and kids and
and you're not
TV.
Done a bunch of these with Zoom and stuff like that, and recording on Zoom. So
yeah,
for a little while, got away from this format.
Well, for a long while,
yeah.
for at least a couple months, and then finally, I don't know when it was, what the first podcast was when I don't know if it was. I did one with Danny, which that was the first one I think I'd done live in person in a long time, and then kind of got back into the flow of it. Pretty much everything since. We've had a couple that have been virtual, over
the one
Zoom,
you did out on your deck with Brian and
yeah,
Dallas, and who else was her name?
And AJ.
AJ, oh my God. I was literally laughing out loud driving down the road listening to you guys.
I know. I don't know if anyone else actually enjoyed that. I know a couple people did because I heard about it, but that was one of my favorite podcasts of all time, just because
fantastic.
That's just us sitting around a table, drinking way too late into the evening. And those are nights you can't. I didn't know. I mean, I wanted them to come over and shoot the shit for a little while, and we were going to talk about mobile tree stand setups and gear and things like that, and we hardly even covered that. It was just wherever the hell the conversation went.
Yep.
And I can't get enough of Brian. Brian on the microphone is just, he's gold, and he doesn't realize
he
it.
doesn't realize
gold.
it.
No.
I think I remember Dallas did a bunch with you.
Yeah.
And I remember telling you, man, Dallas, he's the man. He's just got away with it, He's very, very good. And then a couple times I've heard Brian on. Brian's just such a character, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, he's a hoot when you get him on there.
He
does a nice job.
Brian and I have a unique way of playing off of each other.
Yeah.
I don't know if you just listen, and then even if you just hang out with us, we're just very quick taking shots at each other, and we just, I don't know, him and I have a special relationship, Brian and I don't know what it is, but Danny's Danny, and he kind of hangs back, and he's very he thinks about stuff before he says it, and Brian is just wham wham, he's just hitting you with stuff, and I'm hitting him back. Yeah, it's what makes it fun. Those guys are a blast to hunt with and spend time with. I'm fortunate to have them right there. Not being around home, it's nice to have those guys right in my backyard.
Filling the void, right?
No doubt.
Filling the void.
So we haven't. I don't think you and I have never done a show, just the two of us.
We haven't?
No,
we did.
And me, you, and Jimmy did. The first episode was me, you, and Jimmy. So if people are listening to this,
and we went into that ill prepared.
I'll tell you what, this might be almost exactly a year. Like literally,
Yeah,
it might be almost
yeah.
exactly a year. I'll have to look back to see when we posted because we recorded the podcast,
Yep.
our first episode here at your house.
Yep. With a baseball game on in the back.
Had to have been just about this time because we were a couple weeks out from 2-3 weeks out from going to Colorado, and we recorded that here that night, and then like a week later I recorded that episode with Uncle Chris and Brian before they went out west, and then that was really what kicked the whole podcast off. So yeah, it's been about a year. I guess it's ironic that we're sitting down to do this.
And then we're at episode like 56 or 55 or something?
Yeah, it'll be if you count all of the Breeding Them radios.
If you count the Breeding Them radio,
we're up in the 70s, just because those were, you get multiple episodes a week during that time frame. But I think this will be like episode 56 or 57.
Yeah, it's hard to believe.
Yeah, it's fun.
So it would be about a year. You've done about one a week.
Yeah,
right?
one a week, and we've snuck a couple. We've had a couple two-parters that we'll put in there. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
I guess I'm thinking back to, I think it was February when you and I, or was it in the summer when you and I met with Todd Waldron and did one in Albany?
That was in February.
February, yeah.
Well, that was a winter workshop.
Yeah.
And that was the last time I had you on.
Yep.
And that was a really fun conversation with Todd. And since
that was awesome.
Todd's really gotten his new podcast up off the ground, but it's like that. I wanted to sit down with you because we really haven't. I mean, a lot of our like followers and our listeners, they get a kick out of hearing from you and seeing from you. But you've been quite occupied over the last 5 months, so there hasn't been a whole lot of Big Willy on the
hasn't been
Instagram.
A whole lot of Big Willy on social media at all.
Mm-mm.
I've taken up a new venue. There's been a whole lot of Big Willy on webinars.
Yep.
And did a couple podcasts for odd things that came out of nowhere. I did one with the New York State. Let's see if I get this. I think it was the New York State Association of Counties.
Yep.
So their executive director called and wanted me to do one with him on the school busing and the challenges of the COVID and I don't know. We did that June maybe. It came out in July, I think. So that was really good. And I've done some articles with the Onboard magazine, New York State School Boards Association.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I did those. And then I was doing like with TransFinder and the New York State Association of Pupil Transportation, I was doing webinars like every Thursday or every other Thursday. So I did quite a run of those.
Yeah.
Which was interesting. It was a new experience. And so with all the it's amazing you have something like this, like a pandemic. I'm also the director of security for the school and emergency preparedness, right? So we have a whole section in our plan on pandemic, and every year I go through and update the plan, and you have to have the pandemic section. I'm like, like that's ever going to happen. Here we are. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So, but it really opened up a lot of doors and a lot of, I won't say, I guess opportunity for new experiences.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because of technology. You look at, where you've come with the podcasting and everything, and now I got all my own stuff, and I just don't have the time to start a podcast. But that will be coming when we get school back rolling. But it's interesting how technology plays in with like the staff at our transportation department. The majority of them they're over 65. A lot of them are retirees or people that are what I call using the bus driving as a transition job from their retirement to their real retirement, right? Because they're not quite ready to pack it in entirely. So it's really interesting to see that a lot of people didn't have emails or didn't, use their emails and computers. They were a little sketchy as far as being good on the computer. And, through this past spring, we started with robocalls. I was doing everything like on a robocall, so everybody would get my call. But, then I thought, well, I should have something that people can go back and review. So I started doing like weekly emails, and it was like almost like a newsletter that would come out every week on different. So I would always have in the schedule who's doing what and work, because we did food deliveries and technology deliveries and education. So that whole thing was neat. But by the time it was done, I had my entire staff. I split them up into groups, so we have training groups, and there's 14 to 16 or 17 people per group. So they're small enough that when I'm on a Zoom call, I like to be able to see everybody so I can see if somebody's starting to lean in, they got something to offer,
Right.
they got a question. So we broke it into training groups, and then we now do our meetings by training teams with separate Zoom meetings, which is great for them. It's harder for me because I have to
Do
like
multiple meetings. Yeah.
but a little more personal, I think, than being 60 people deep in a Zoom call, where you're not, there isn't the same level of interaction. So.
Right.
So yeah, there's been all sorts of things. It's just
And it's funny because a lot, you touched on the food delivery. I don't think many people really understood, and maybe still don't understand what schools continued to do throughout the shutdown. If you have kids, you likely know, or if you're somehow associated or have somebody that is, like, whether a spouse is a teacher or somebody, whatever, you might probably have an understanding.
Yep.
But interacting and seeing what you guys have been doing all throughout, and this has gone on for 5 months.
Yeah.
Everything you've done, and delivering meals, and it's one thing in some, like, an area like this, you may not have as many households and kids that are on those food programs so that they have meals to eat, because a lot of these kids don't have food when they go home at night. Like,
Right.
That's a thing, and a lot of people don't realize that. And throughout this pandemic, I think it really opened a lot of people's eyes, whether it be drivers or staff, just people within the school, that they're like, wow, we have all these meals to deliver. And, oh, why is that? Well, then you start to understand, some of the shortfalls that there are out there. And some of these kids that, they go home at night, they might have had their last meal at school. That was the last thing they were going to eat for the week or for the day before they go back to school the next day. And that's sad. I didn't understand the volume. Like, you go into some of the more rural areas where it's a little bit lower income and a little bit more poverty, not a lot of, maybe a lot of unemployment.
Yeah.
Man, you hear some of these stories about how many drops they're doing in these districts for meals on a daily basis. It was
I think so. It was basically 3.5 months we delivered. I haven't done the math, but I think we were hanging around 700 meals a day we were delivering, and we do 1,400 on Fridays to carry people through the weekend. Mm-hmm. And we had some actually delivering. We have some students through a program called Urban Suburban that reside in the city, so we were running meals in there.
No kidding.
All the way into the city of Rochester. And then we had 2 different pickup zones where people could come and get food, and then we had drivers out on a bus running for people that didn't have a car, couldn't come get the food. We would take it to them. So
yeah.
But I think if that's 3,500 or 4,000 a week, that's 16,000 a month, and we did that for 3.5 months. So it's 30, 18, 50. So you're looking at over 50,000 meals we delivered in 3.5 months, or handed out or distributed, however you want it. So we did that on top of handing out and taking out
homework,
instructional materials, books, laptops. It's just and then for the graduates, we put together routes and took out signs for their yards, and trying to make sure we gave them a special send off.
Yeah.
So it was the end of the school year was crazy, because it was like in transportation. The one neat thing about it is we repeat what we do. Like every year we repeat every day, and there's always things that change, subtleties, but for the most part, we do tomorrow what we did today, with the exception of sports trips and some anomalies there. But the meat and potatoes of our operation rolls day to day. It's the same thing, So we stopped doing everything we had a system for, if you will, or a process, and then we began doing all sorts of things that we didn't even like. Okay, here's the task. We'll handle it. We'll do it. But we got to figure out how.
Yeah.
Right. So everything we did, we had to figure out how to do it. And then do it, and then you'd get a different new task, and you would figure that one out. So it was interesting. While we were doing all that, we were getting ready for this school year.
Yeah.
Doing our routing and
not knowing when that was going to be. I mean,
or what it would look like.
I'm just sitting here thinking about, like during that period of time, there was still hope we were going back to school to finish the school year.
Yeah, who knew,
and
right?
then we were,
That we were gonna be
marching
out.
through May, and you're getting through May, and it's like, are we going back to school? Like you're trying to figure out come July 1, is summer school going to happen? Is all this? It was just, and it's, here we are, it's the middle of August, and it's, what a whirlwind.
We
all
had
the
our
stuff that's happened.
Summer school usually starts right after the 4th, and nobody could give us an answer, so we had to assume it was a go, right? Because you can't have July 6th or 7th come and not be ready. So, we did all the routing, got everything set for summer school. We did everything except assign the routes, and then they pulled the plug on summer school. So, which was, what are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
So, and then it's just been, the whole summer has been not knowing, like normally the stuff that we do, we get our daycare comes in, private parochial, and all the little specialty, I call them courtesy services that we do, all that stuff comes in, gets plugged into the system, and kids, get routed accordingly for daycare and things like that, and dual residency and whatever else they got going on. And never couldn't get any of that because we didn't know if we were going to open. It was August 7th when the governor said, you can open if you meet like this criteria, which we do meet the criteria. And thankfully for all of us, the COVID seems to be, in check. I think statewide our averages are, for spread is well under 1%. So 5% was a threshold. If you're 5 or under, you can start, you can open. So then the governor came back out and said that we had to have, the meetings with parents and teachers, because ultimately they would decide whether we went or not and what level of confidence they had. And then we were going to go, everybody was going 5 days a week. And then as we started trying to pull that plan together, we realized that wouldn't work, especially at the secondary level. And really it was because you had too much of a loss of program. So, high school is supposed to be an area where you begin to specialize, right? Everybody takes the same stuff in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. By the time you get to high school, you're taking AP Physics, or maybe you're into the arts, whatever, So we would have had to cut too many of those programs. And then, if you're going to do that, it's not high school anymore, right? There's kids that are 1 year away from finishing that path. And if you take that course away, they graduate without that success. So, so we went with a hybrid. So we're doing A day, B day type thing, but it's 5 days on, 5 days off with an alpha split. So, then you're back to, all this has happened the last 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, I know. It's insane.
And we changed up the daycare policy, and all our courtesy services have been not completely eliminated, but you can only have one bus morning and afternoon because we want to keep our kids within cohorts.
Right.
So anyways, long story short, right now, normally our bus information would be out to the community. They'd be able to look up on our computer system, do a search, find out what bus little Billy's riding to school, but
Right.
I haven't even got it out yet. That's what I worked on all day today and all last weekend, and we're working literally 7 days a week.
Yeah.
I had to laugh because I heard the other night they were talking on the news. There was a school district, I don't know if it was one of the city school districts or something, and they were talking about how they've worked tirelessly 24/7, to try to figure out a way to make whatever happened, whatever plan it was they were putting together. And I'm thinking to myself, literally, you have not, right? You go home and you go to bed. It's like it's not like the firefighters in California. They are working.
Right.
They are working 24/7.
Right. Right.
We are working very hard, but comes a point in time when we,
you have to shut your eyes.
You have to
relax.
Right,
Yeah.
you got to shut down. But I think the point was that it's a pretty
exhausting,
significant task and very exhausting.
And the stress of, and it doesn't matter if it's you in your position, or if it's like even just as simple as what I'm doing. Like the
it
job you have.
Every industry, right?
Just the unknown is just, and you rush, and then, oh, this isn't available, or you can't do this, or this changes, and so this has been, in my lifetime, and then you stack on top of that having a baby, and it's same thing for Jimmy now. Jimbo, they had their son last week, and everything in your world just not. It's like that's probably the best thing that could have happened to Sarah and I during this period,
right,
was to have the baby, because it just like, what, in everything that's going on, this is the only thing that matters.
Right, this
is
is what's
baby,
really important. Yep.
these 2 kids, like that's all that matters. So thank God for that. And I know, I'm sure for you and Mom, it was probably a lot of the same. Like it gave you guys something to think about other than.
It's an escape. It's the only escape we've had is the grandkids, and
right.
It's funny because with everything going on, work is like it's never been before. And, the 30-some years I've been in business, 35 years I've been in pupil transportation one way or another. And I've never seen anything like it. But, nonetheless, we'll navigate through it. We'll make it happen. But it's such an uncertain time anyway, right, for everybody. And there are people that have lost jobs and their lives have changed. And, in our life, we I joke with your mother. I go, we can't even get any time off in a pandemic. Everybody else is like laid off for 6 weeks or to furloughed. Not us. We got to keep going.
Right.
So it's like, good God. But just a stage we're at in our life where her, Grandpa is having troubles and Grandma. So our parents, health-wise, we got stuff going on there that we're struggling to help them through. And then on the other flip side of it, we got new grandkids coming in, and
Yeah, I can't imagine.
so it's been a crazy time. Not much time for feeding them.
No, you have not. Well, I'm sure you do a little feeding them as much as you can just to take the edge off and relax a little bit. But yeah, as far as the physical whitetail feeding them, I thank God for Jimmy doing what he did with the food plots and Uncle Mike doing what he's
Uncle
been
Mike
doing
being up
with the woods, because
I've cut the lawn. I bought all that siding for the cabin. I had all these plans. I got the measurements for putting new windows in, new doors in.
Oh, did you?
Well, I got all the stuff to do it, and then I haven't had a chance to do any of it.
Yeah, you'll do that when you retire.
Yeah,
At this rate.
I'll do that during deer season, because I'll whack one the first Saturday a bow, and then go down and work on the cabin. But yeah, it's been a crazy time, and it's it's going to be. I guess we have to resolve the fact that, like, in what we're doing, like, we just have to keep our eye on the ball and see it through till we get school started. And so, and then, so I'm already thinking, like, early bear. I'm like, okay, scratch that. That's probably not going to happen. I'm not going to be able to get away for that.
Yeah.
But and everything I plan to do with my bow, I haven't done, because I figured, well, I'd do it in February, March, April break. I'll go get the bow, when everything was shut down.
Right.
So now I got a bow that's 14 years old and probably in dire need of a tuning, but in a string. And
I can take it in for you.
Yeah.
I mean, the bow is what it. If you're just going to use the same bow and you just want to get it tuned up, I mean, I can take it in for you.
I think it's too late to switch bows. I don't want to start a new piece of equipment right now.
I
That's something I'd like to do in the spring and shoot through the summer, and I don't want to be hurried either, because I'll go in there and I'm like, yeah, this will do.
That's true. Yeah.
No, and you know what? Last couple of years, for whatever reason, been the same way. And I can remember it'd be like 1st October, and you guys are like, Dad, you going hunting? Nope.
Haven't even got my bow out yet.
I'm going to get my bow out. I'll be hunting by the 15th October. That's kind of the time frame I'm on, because that's what I grew up with.
Well, that's what. The 15th was always the opener. So, when it went early there, I don't know how many years ago that was. 10 years ago, maybe.
I don't know. Has it
10,
been that
15
long?
years? I don't know. I can. Maybe not. I mean, I can remember hunting with Chris over at his grandma's, and I guess that would have been the beginning of archery, and that would have been in the middle of October. So maybe it's only been 10 years since that's changed. But
like Uncle Mike says, he won't hunt before the 15th of October. That's the way he was programmed. Like, when we grew up, that's when you start hunting. And he'll be up there. He's up at camp. I'm like, you going to go out this morning? No, it ain't the 15th October. I'm like, the season's open. I don't care if it's open. That's what he does. He hunts on the 15th October. So
I don't know. I heard he got doe tags this year. I think he's.
Oh, he told me. He said he's going to put them down this year.
Good.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
He's the most selective hunter. He has probably more opportunity than any of us, and shoots less deer.
Yeah, but he's just like you. I mean, guys.
He's out for the experience.
He's out for the
experience.
experience. He likes stalking up on stuff and being on the backside of the hill, and still hunting. And it's funny. So I went through when I had some of this time off, I went through and was trying to gather all these old pictures. I found these. Where did I? I don't know where the hell I got. If it was CDs I had or something, but I got a bunch of old pictures from something that were like on a computer you had or something.
Yeah, probably one of those old hard drives, because I got a digital camera and we used to download them.
Yeah,
that
I don't know where, but anyway, I mean, I've got pictures that I was digging through, and you had folders inside of folders inside of folders, and I don't know what you were doing. I don't know how many Jack and Cokes you had or whatever, gin and tonics, when you were organizing them, because there's bear hunt pictures from 2003 and a 2016 opening day of deer season catalog. Like, I'm like, what is this doing in here? But like, looking back, I mean, some of the deer that Uncle Mike, used to shoot, that sounds bad, like saying used to shoot, but like,
oh, he went through a stretch where he went slobs.
Yeah, and that was probably during his 40s, I would say. Right, probably in his 40s. He shot some great bucks off of our property in Naples, and then when he shot that 6-point, I think that was like one of the last really big bucks that he shot. he shot a
Yeah.
big one with his gun after that.
Yeah, I think that Big 10 that he shot in the center of the hill. I think
With
you
Jimmy?
you were there too, weren't you?
I was there. I was with you.
Yeah,
But that was before the 6
that was
point.
before the 6 point. So I don't know what he's. I mean, he's got obviously some nice, respectable bucks, but I mean nothing of that caliber.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I was going back through the pictures. I mean, there was like 5 or 6 like really good bucks that he shot.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny. But I know that he went through that stretch with like 3 or 4 years where he was, he more than that, probably 6, 8 years where it was taking Jake out, taking
Yep.
Jen
Jennifer,
out, Tracy,
Yep.
and that was his focus, and
Right.
and you went
he
through the
had
same thing
he
with
had
us.
some really nice bucks that he let walk right in front of him, and I can remember one that was it
with
was
Tracy, and Tracy didn't want to shoot,
was
right?
it Tracy or Jen? I think it was Jennifer, and it was opening day on the stand right below the Y there where the logging road split on the back of the South Hill, and he was in there, and they walked like 15 yards, eye level, right in front of him. They're on the side hill and in this pine tree, and he said, "Bill, it was a wall hang." And I'm like, I can't believe you didn't take it. No, it was her hunt. It was her hunt.
Wow.
That's the way he is. He goes
Yeah.
out and it's her. But yeah, he let it walk opening day. It was a dandy. But yeah, I went through the same thing with you guys where, I had been fortunate in getting a lot of really nice bucks early. My very first buck was a wall hanger. He was like one of the top eight pointers in the state that year, I think. But I had a whole bunch of good ones, and then you guys came in. It really did shift my focus. I'm like, I only got a window of time to do this with you guys. And I took you out when you were really little, like you're 5, 6, with archery. On a nice day we'd go out and hunt a little bit. But the really at 9 I had you guys out, and both of you just coincidentally, both of you were 9 when you were with me when you got your first. When I got my first, you were in on a kill when you were 9 with
right.
me.
With you, yeah.
And then after that, there was several, right, with, you, me, and Jimmy, and Joel. And so that really was what it was about, and then getting back to it now, we're kind of, I've heard you talk about the phases of a hunter. And now it's like I like to shoot what I need to eat, and other than that, I just enjoy being out there. And,
Yeah.
it's and I think that's where Mike's at. But both Mike and I were talking, and we're like running low on venison, and we're like, we need to shoot a couple more deer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you do it. I mean, I shot 8 last year,
Yeah.
and I mean, we're out of burger.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of I didn't grind up all that many cuts like roasts, and obviously backstraps are not getting ground, but I have a lot of roast left, so I can still make some burger to get us through till our grind after the first of the year.
Yep.
But I don't know how you guys. I mean, when you
Well,
and
that
Uncle Mike shoot 1 or 2 deer, it's like I don't know how the hell you do that.
Yeah, I
mean,
was shooting 3 every year when that's what we need.
Yeah.
So I would shoot usually a buck with my bow, a buck with my gun, and and these aren't huge deer, right? I'm shooting 120-pound, if whatever comes along. That's what I'm, but and then a doe. I would usually take a doe and 2 bucks, and I was on that string there for a long time. And last year with Grandpa sick, I hardly hunted at all. Had no time off from work. It was just crazy.
Yeah.
And so I only got 1 deer, which was like a hardship for us. And luckily, like that roast we had tonight, that was from 2018. That was from the buck I shot on the back of the South Hill in 2018.
No
It
kidding.
was beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, that was fantastic.
Oh, it was fantastic. So
Yeah, I don't really care if the stuff's frozen. I don't care if it's 3 years old. As long as it
Yeah.
looks good, I'm eating.
So we finished up all the burger. This is the first year that I think by the time we hit Burger Day, my burger will be completely gone. My venison, because I'm trying to hold on to a little bit of venison for deer camp, so we can be up there and have some.
Don't worry about that. I got you covered.
Yeah, well, of course, you and Jimmy by the 5th of October will have fresh meat. So
I hope so. Yeah, and it's funny. I become like a hoarder with my my meat too, especially if I get stuff that's
used to give it away.
I
all
know.
the time.
I'm still I do give meat away, but we've only had 1 package of elk meat. I'm hoarding that. Like Tard
Afraid
split
to
it
eat
up
it?
last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still have. I haven't had any of the roasts. I haven't had any of the backstrap. None of it. And it's like I don't want to eat it. And so the gobbler I shot in 2019, it was my first longbeard.
Mm-hmm.
I still have a breast from that bird in the freezer, and I look at it all the time. I'm like, Sarah, we got to make this, and then I don't want to eat it because I'm like, once I eat it, it's gone, and then
Gotta get another one.
yeah. So it's funny, that elk, holy shit. Man, I'll tell you what.
Is it good?
That elk meat, we the burger's all I've had so far, and it tastes just so much like just ground beef. It's just, venison is dark.
Yeah.
And it's not that I barely say venison's gamey. It's not the gamey. It's just a different density of the meat,
Yep.
But that elk it's a very light colored meat, very fair, mild tasting. It's just fantastic. So I do have a decent amount left of that.
Well, bring it up to camp.
I will, yeah. And I think I did bring some last year, but we never ate it. I think I took it home.
We always bring more food. Like Adam will bring stuff. I'll bring stuff. Jimmy's like, well, we end up with all
you
this
got a
meat.
bunch of stuff in the freezer, and it's
Yeah. We only eat so much.
Yeah.
So, but here it's like we cook like that venison roast. I mean, if you and Bill Dan weren't here, I mean that would last us 3 days.
Yeah.
It still might. What's left? I mean, we find that we'll cook up some venison, and we usually get like 3 meals out of it.
That's true. Yeah, with just you and Mom, that's a big difference.
Yeah. So we just don't eat as much as we used to. But we love having the burger. I love like venison meatloaf. You make meatballs or whatever, hamburgers. And interestingly, like this year, I didn't know what we were going to do. I only had the one deer. And so I thought, I'm not going to make any hot dogs. I know your mother loves the hot dogs that we make over to Timmy Steele there. It's Steele Sausage and Catering. She loves those cheddar dogs. So do I. But usually I do that with one of my 3 deer. So I made it all into straight burger. And you know me, I always have like breakfast and Italian, and I like some Cajun. So, and I always have some leftover seasoning. So I got seasoning in little bags. And then I'll take out and then whatever I want at that time, we'll either have it just plain, or maybe I'll mix in some seasonings, and Jimmy showed us to, put an egg in there with it. So we, almost like you're going to make a meatloaf and then season it and then make hamburgers out of it. But I almost like it better that way, because whatever I'm in the mood for that day,
Yeah. I think I told Sarah that I think I'm going to stop seasoning the ground burger and just have it just plain burger.
Yep.
And then whatever we're doing with it, season it for it, whether it's
Season it appropriate,
tacos
yeah.
or if it's breakfast sausage or whatever. And that's probably what a lot of people do. I don't know, but I always run into that. I have a bunch of Italian ground burger left.
Oh, I love that. Give it to me.
I'll trade for what you don't have. You got pheasant. I'll trade for some pheasant. That's what I'll trade
I
for.
got a bunch of pheasants. I got pheasants, walleye, turkey. Well, that's what I told your mother when this COVID thing hit and everybody was like worried about food. I'm like, we're all set.
fine.
We're good.
Did MRK give you any bass?
Only walleye.
He gave us a couple bags of bass. Holy hell.
Were they good?
We've been making fish fries with them.
Yeah. Delicious, huh?
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And that guy can fillet a fish.
That's the thing.
If he gives you a fillet, man, it's nice.
It's a nice cut of meat.
And there's not all full of bones and everything.
Yeah.
He does a really nice
He
job.
does. So I listened back to that podcast with him.
Did you ever release that?
No, I have to wait for his
yeah, well, that's right.
approval.
There was a time, he had to get approval. Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know when I'm going to release it, but it's freaking gold.
Is it?
Oh, he is just such a character. That podcast is awesome.
That was fun. It was a hot day.
It was like
Friday afternoon,
90-something.
90-some degrees.
4th of
and we
July.
couldn't sit by the lake because it made too much noise.
Right.
So
And I didn't have these headsets. I mean, these things cut out a fair amount of the background noise. Like you can get away with sitting outside on a windy day, and these aren't too bad. But those lapel mics are they pick up freaking, a frog could fart 200 yards
get
away
everything.
and it would hear it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great episode. But anyway,
So yeah, we can trade, but that's a neat thing to do. And quite honestly, I think anything I put in casings, obviously I'll have my seasoning in.
Yeah.
And everything I make bulk, I think I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, and it's just because then you don't have to worry about. It's like, oh darn it, I'm out of. I used all my regular burgers gone, and I only have like Italian left or Cajun or something. And your mother wants something that's because she's going to use it in spaghetti or meatballs or meatloaf or something. She doesn't. Now I love using the sauce. I love using some of that ground venison.
Yeah.
You take like an Italian ground venison mix and put it in there and make a meatloaf out of it. Man, that's good.
it is.
But
Fantastic.
she says it's too hot for her.
It's too hot. Makes her sweat. Mom
Yeah.
doesn't sweat.
No, she doesn't believe in it.
Never sweat in her life.
No.
Nope, never has.
Not going to start now.
No, why would you at this age? That'd be just a bad idea. So what did you have in your show notes? Because I'm sure that what we've talked about so far was not in your show notes.
No, but it's fine. I don't know, depending on where it went. I just one of the things I had was I was just wondering, have you ever been scared of a buck?
Scared?
Yeah, I mean, did you ever have a buck that like you're in your stand because you're scared to get out?
Yeah.
Because he's pissed off on the ground and he's making noise and grunting and.
No, I've never had that happen, but I have been. I don't know if I've been scared of a specific deer, but I'm scared of the idea of being like this close to a buck or to an elk. Like,
Yeah.
that was one of the things elk hunting that I was very nervous about. When you get into that dark timber
All of a sudden they're gonna poke their head out.
and they're
right
like
there.
right there, like there was a couple different setups that Bob and I had when we were hunting together last fall, and we watch these elk come down into the timber from above the tree line, and we're trying to cut them off. We know we're in there, and I mean you can smell them.
You know you're close,
You're
right?
freaking in the trails are just pounded down. There's scat everywhere. There's and it's like you're in them, and it's like Bob's like, you set up right here, and there's this little like, little rise. There's a little ditch and this little rise, and we're in this. It's all like timber or whatever, the pines or whatever they are.
Pines and cedars and
Cedars and he's back behind me calling. I'm like, if a bull comes, he's gonna. When I see him, he's going to be at like 10 yards, coming straight at me. And listen, if somebody wants to say that doesn't make you nervous, you're full of shit.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's a cow.
I know.
You got an 900 pound animal staring at you, even a whitetail. I mean, you get a buck who's on a mission and he thinks there's something over there and he's trying to get through you to get to it. Like, it definitely, makes the hair raise on your arms.
Yeah.
But I can't say that there's been a specific situation where I've been weary, and I can say that my fear in the woods has, like, I used to be scared. I mean,
it get dark. You're like, it'll be dark in an hour. I'm going to get out of here, get back to the
or
cabin
even walking into the woods in the going to your stand in the dark. That used to scare me, but I'll tell you what, again, like going out west, that changed my perspective of what dark is and what wild is.
Yeah.
Because you go out there and you're, many miles in, and there's no noise, there's no light.
Yeah.
And you hear something in the bushes, and it's like, I don't know what that is. I don't know. And so, like, now I've had several situations like these last couple of years since I've kind of gotten a little bit more confident and comfortable in the woods in the dark. I'll be walking to my tree stand without my headlamp on, or the red or green light on instead, so I'm not lighting everything up, and going in an hour before the sun comes up, and it's like you jump a deer that's like 5 feet away off the trail,
right,
and it's looking at you. All you can see is eyes. You don't know what it is, but it's a deer, and it's like, well, it's going to be just as scared of me, so you just keep walking. Like, doesn't matter.
When we first started having bear down there, I'd be a little nervous of the bear, but I don't know. It doesn't really worry me anymore. But
Do you ask that question because you have an experience?
I did have an experience.
I was wondering.
So years ago, I used to. I was hunting out on Briggs Road, our farm on Briggs Road.
Yeah.
And I had a tree stand. I think it was a portable. I had a portable hung up in a big, huge old triple trunk maple out on the hedgerow, and kind of looked into the back of Fred Frieda's woods. And so I used to get I had permission to hunt back there, and I hung that stand. I killed some deer back there, and I used to see, I saw some really nice ones. That's back like where Tim got Hercules this year.
Like by the sheep pasture, right?
Yeah, right there. So I went out on an evening hunt, and I walked in from the Town Line Road, and I got up in that stand, and I had a bunch of buck lures during rut, and I had a bunch of buck lure, and I had rags, and I like dipped that, I don't know what kind it was, tinks or whatever, but whatever it was, I hung it in the trees like around the base of where I was there. I was on the edge of cornfield to my left. I'm looking west, cornfield to my left, thick sheep pasture to my right, and then I'm looking, I got like 40 yards till you hit the edge of the woods where my hedgerow goes into, and I'm parked back, 3/4 of a mile or a mile back to the east. But so I got that out there, and I'm rattling. I got my bow out there, right? So I'm sitting, and it's like getting ready. The snowstorm was coming. I knew they were calling for snow, and it starts snowing, and it boy, it come down. And it was like a nor'easter. So the wind was like out of the east behind me, blowing kind of down low. And I'm up into the stand, and it's like northeast wind blowing into the woods. And I'm rattling, grunting, right? And so I'm like, well, I might as well quit that because it's getting dark. I've got to get down soon, so I'm going to stop. So I stop, and all of a sudden, like in Fred Frida's woods, I could hear stuff, like some thrashing going on in there, and I hear grunting and everything. And then this buck comes out, and probably one of the biggest bucks that I ever had come by me, like in archery. But now it's like getting dark. Like I was letting it get completely dark, then I was going to get down and leave, and I was wishing I had gotten out of there before that.
Yeah.
So this buck comes over. I don't know if he smelled the lure or, because I was rattling and grunting.
You were running.
Yeah. But he come over, and he was a bruiser. I'm telling you, this buck was big. And he's all stiff-legged, and he's like grunting and making like now I would probably say it might have been, I don't know, like a snort wheeze, or he's very vocal. I've never heard a deer so vocal.
Huh.
And I thought he was like going to walk on by, but he didn't. Then he come back, and he was like hanging around, So he's like freaking me out. And he was like really mad. His hair, it's pounding snow. Now it's like dark, and I can see his outline there, like 20, 30 yards away, and the wide open. And he's standing there, and his hair's all bristled up, and his ears are laid back. And I'm like, I am not getting down.
No, that deer's there to fight is what he was there for.
He was ready to do. So I sat up there, and when there's no cell phones or nothing,
no.
I had no way of letting your mother know what was going on.
My God.
So I'm out there, and I'm telling you, it's snowing like an inch or two an hour, And I was out there, and then he went into the brush. He ended up going in back behind me to the east of me. And he went into that sheep pasture, and I'm like, he's right in there. I'm not getting down. Then he hears my noise. He's going to come charging out or something. So I waited a long time before I got out of there. But I was out there for like a couple hours. I was cold and soaked with snow. And then finally, I'm like, I got to get out of here. So I got down, and I walked like straight south to get away from the brush line, and then right up the middle of the field. Boy, God hell when I got home because I was so late. But that's the only time I ever had a buck. Like, I mean, I'm telling you, that buck was like giving me the
that would
willies.
freak me out.
Yeah, he was not happy. So yeah, I was like, it made me think of time years ago when I was probably in my late teens, but they came out with a scent vent, and it was this little plastic thing, and you unscrewed it, and inside was a felt disc. Mm-hmm. And if you unscrewed it like a few threads, then as it opened up, it left the head of the slots where it would cut out. So I'm like, well, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
So I got that, and we didn't have tree stands or nothing. I was just sitting on a log in the woods. I was over in the valley, and right down below where my opening day spot is now, down in the flats out there, and like 10 o'clock in the morning or whatever. But I used to take the scent vent, and I'd soak the heck out of it, this lure, and then I actually clipped it on my shoulder.
Yeah.
So it's on my right shoulder, opened up,
Yeah.
And I'm sitting on this log leaning up against a tree. And all of a sudden, I like heard something, and it dawned on me there's something like right here on my right shoulder, And I spin and look, and it ended up being like a little 4-pointer, and he's like stretched out. His nose is like he's sniffing that thing, So yeah, note to self: don't wear it on your person.
Oh my God!
But he didn't scare me, but that big buck did. He was because it was quite. I'll never forget that.
That's wild.
Yeah, and if it was gun season, I wouldn't have cared. I'd have got down and started back, But I'm like, man, if he comes out,
you're in trouble.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's a cool experience. I would like to experience seeing a buck like that. That's that rutted up, and
it's the only time I've ever seen it like that.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, think about the amount of hours and the amount of time.
The only other one I saw like that was the 11-pointer I got mounted in the garage. I got with my gun back in the valley, my blind. So I was rattling, and I had one spot. It was right above where Corey owns now, on a ridge there. And I would get in that tree stand during the rut. I would literally sit in that tree stand all day, sun up, sundown. So I had these rattling horns. They're the ones I think you have them at your house. The sheds I found, they were nice, like 8 points or whatever.
You're talking the corner pasture out there.
Yeah, right above. I used to call it the teepee stand. There was an old teepee there in the
part
part
of
the
teepee.
Nature.
Yeah, people that have been listening to this podcast know
the teepee spot.
The teepee. We've talked about it on here.
So it was right above the teepee. I mean, like 40 yards from there, right on that ridge. But I started rattling, and so I did a couple series of rattling. All of a sudden, I see this buck coming in, and it was like a 6-pointer or something, he was coming in very, just kind of like you would expect a 6-pointer to come to some hard rattling, curious, And he coming in, he kept coming. I'm going to shoot him, right? So it's archery. I'm in my stand. I'm going to shoot him. And all of a sudden, there's this crashing, and out of nowhere, this huge buck comes out. And he was like grunting and making all this noise, and he chased that deer. He had his head down, and almost like he had his rack right up against that deer's rump. And that deer was running as fast as he could, and that big old buck was running faster and just pushing that deer. He pushed him right up towards the big oak. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, holy cow, where'd he come from? He must have come in from behind me or something. But it was like such a unique deer and such a big deer. I mean, just don't see him like that much more. And then I shot him, opening day.
Oh, so it was the 11-pointer.
It was the 11-pointer I shot opening day, yeah.
So,
but that was that's the only other like real hard rutting, like where I saw him like right in front of me, like the rattling worked. You know, I'm not a big rattler. I don't do it a lot, but I'll tell you what, it worked that day, and it worked. I thoroughly ticked off that buck on that snowy night.
And I think it's a lot different now. I mean, I don't know. Back then, you guys talk about how there really wasn't property lines. I mean, people just kind of hunted wherever they wanted to hunt, and nobody really followed, the lines back then. So there could have been just as many people. But it seems like now with the four-wheelers and with the ability for people to get around super easily, to get from point A to point B, it just seems like calling here in New York anyway, it's not super effective. Like any of the rattling I've ever done, I've called in some little bucks, but very rarely do I get anything to come in that's, decent in size. But
yeah, and I'm not enough of an expert on it, but I would think that, I think some of it depends. I know Joel has rattled more than I have. He's rattled here in Mendon.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it depends on, your herd density, your buck-to-doe ratios, how competitive they are.
How many mature bucks you
how
have
many,
in the area.
I mean, because let's face it, it's fun to rattle in a 6-point, but I'd rather rattle in a 3.5 or 4.5-year-old buck,
Right.
But by the time I'm rattling, they're probably already locked down. The interesting thing is I think we should be rattling much earlier than we do. I always like, it's rut, I'm going to rattle now.
Yep.
I think we ought to start rattling to some extent 1st October. I've seen bucks fighting in September.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so.
Well, I was just gonna bring it up. When I had Jesse on here, Jesse Coots, one of the tips he gave was, rattling like right away, early on in the season, October 1, but not rattling, just taking the tips of horns and just
'cause that's what they
them
do
together. And when I thought about that after that podcast and discussion, it's like, yeah, you very rarely do you see two deer just going to war.
right.
Around here, you just very rarely you don't see that. But all the time, you see deer out feeding in the field, out interacting with each other, and just sizing each other up, walking up.
They're pushing a little. They're
Right.
We've seen it, right? We've
Oh,
been
yeah,
out at
see it
night,
all
and
the
you're
time.
watching with your glasses, and they come together, but they're pushing a little, and they're just it's that feeling each other out, really.
Right. Seeing how big are you? Are you the big guy on the block, or
If you got to knock them down, drag them out fight going on, like if that's what you're trying to mimic during the rut, chances are you're not bringing in a 6-pointer.
No.
They might come to the perimeter and look in and see what's going on over there, maybe. But, what we're after is a big one, and I think that just that curiosity. I've often thought about it, but I just haven't done it. But I should rattle more probably, but
yeah.
I never
I'm
hunt
gonna-
long enough. Last few years, I've shot my buck on the first day.
Yeah, you go out and it's
I
just
go
like,
out,
oh.
shoot a buck, and done.
Dad's been here for 4 hours, and he
Yeah.
already shot a buck, and his tag is filled, and now he's back at camp drinking coffee. That a couple things I wanted to hit on with you there. I wanted to talk to you about your blind spot, where you're blind, where you killed majority of your bucks that are mounted.
That are
your
in
best
the
bucks.
that are in the books. I'm trying to think if I killed anything that a record, any book bucks that were not there. I think every one of them came from there.
So it's what, 4 or 5?
5, I think.
So we just did that live podcast this week with John from Whitetail 101, and we talked a lot about tree stands or finding spots, and
Yeah, that was one of the
and
things
having
I had. on
having
here.
things. I want to talk about your strategy with that, because I think that's something that's lost on a lot of people right now. There's this craze about having stands and tree stands and ground blinds and these elevated blinds and all this stuff. You've shot your biggest bucks out of a pile of logs in the middle of a valley.
Right.
And so I don't know if I've ever really talked to you about. I think I know why you had it there, but I'm curious. How'd you end up in that spot? Because the way that the landscape is back in that valley now is a little bit different than what it was before. Because now there's multiple different logging roads at different levels on the hill, so the traffic is different with 4-wheelers and things. But what was it like when you first found that spot and set up that blind?
So,
I guess and I don't know if you were going to go there, but how did you pick that spot? I guess is my question.
So I'm trying to think when I would have picked that. I picked that spot in you were born in 87, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I picked that spot in 1987. And that back then, there was no hunting videos. They had the Deer and Deer Hunting magazine. And I always had gotten that, read the articles. So there was an article in there. I read an article about using, like, for deep woods hunting, back in the back country. It was like, it was something you would apply maybe to the Adirondacks or the mountains of Pennsylvania, but it was like knowing where to set up, to find the natural funnel. So you say, well, find a funnel. Well, you look at a topo map of 1,000 acres of woods and say, well, where's the funnel? And people are like, what the hell's a funnel? What are you talking to me about?
Right. It's not 1,000 acres of farm fields with 3 different drainage ditches.
So, and I didn't know for sure, right? But so I read that article, and they talked about using topo maps. And at the time you didn't have satellite imagery and everything. So I went to a fishing shop in Fairport or Egypt or wherever it was out there. JV Tackler, where they sold these maps. You could buy topo maps there. So I bought topo maps, and then I brought them back, and they were saying how to study them and look for points that come together, on ridge lines, or how to find a saddle on top of a hill or whatever. So
yeah.
So anyways, I was looking because I had always noticed, I've been hunting that area for a long time, and there was no logging roads except for there was an old logging road that was not used at all. And nobody had 4-wheelers, but there was an old logging road that went along the creek the whole length of the valley. There was no logging roads going up and down the hills, across the hills, nothing, right? So I went, and I had been in that whole valley, and I realized that at the pond, where the ponds are back in there, that the water flows opposite ways. So the water that goes out to the west end or southwest, right? So that's got to flow into whatever, like the Canandaigua Lake watershed.
Right.
And the other end, from the pond headed back towards our camp, County Road 36, flows to the Honeywell Lake watershed. So I got thinking, it's like if you have water, there's one pond and the water flows in 2 directions, that's got to be like the highest point, right? So I thought, I was looking on the map, and that's like if you look at the elevation, how it drops all the way down to like towards where Corey's is of the road.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, that's the highest point. And in theory, right, if the hills are the same height on the top and you're at the highest point in the valley, then the hills are the shortest there.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, looking on the topo map where those lines come together and it's the same level, right? Now you can't hunt the whole thing. You got to pick a spot, right? So that's how I settled in, and I didn't want to be like in the bottom of the valley. So I thought I'll be partway up the hill at about the level that I feel the deer would cross, right? And I was right below, like right at the base of the steep hill. So I figure anything that gets kicked off, and there's some farmland up there. So if anything got kicked off, nobody's coming down there chasing a deer. But if they kick one down, it should, in theory, come like where I am, and cross over the other hill, and go right back up. So I went back there, and we didn't do a lot of preseason scouting. We didn't have cameras or any of that. So I went back in there, though, and I started looking during archery. I had little exploring hunts up there. And so I found that spot, and I'm like, I think this is about the spot. I can see both hills. I can see anything coming up or down either one. This is kind of where the valley comes together on the east side. And if you went to the other side, it's where I killed that 9-point a couple years ago. Remember when Jimmy jumped a 9-point and it came down and crossed right by those little ponds.
Yep.
So that's where it starts to break and go the other way. So I've killed wall hangers on both ends, if you will.
Yeah.
And I tried hunting the middle. Just so you know, like over the years, I've hunted right in the middle of that, and I've never done squat there.
Yeah, it's
but
interesting.
on the edges, if you will, of where that, if you were to look at a topo map where it comes up, right where it meets and peaks, and then it kind of plateaus where the pond is, on each edge, I've killed big bucks. So I set up a blind. Again, we didn't have portables or anything, and we the only thing we did was build permanence. There's probably a lot of people cussing us out because there's 2x4s and stuff nailed up in a tree that's like, I don't even know whose property it was. We would. Your Uncle Mike and I used to take wood. We'd have a spot in mind, and the only way to go up the hill was to climb up the hill. So we would take 2x4s, plywood, and we would nail it together. So it was one big block of wood, like put the plywood in the middle, put the 2x4s on the outside, nail it all together.
Right.
So, because can you imagine trying to carry armloads of loose wood up the hill?
No.
So we would nail all the wood together and then take a crowbar and a hammer with us. And when we get up there, we'd take the wood apart, pull the nails out of it, and then put it back together into a tree.
Oh my God.
But at any rate, I didn't feel like doing that. It was too far back up in the valley.
Yeah, it's a long ways from camp.
So I found the spot. I'm like, this would be a nice, like a blind. So I started gathering up dead trees, tree tops that had fallen, old dead wood, and I just started stacking it up. And in between, I'm thinking they're basswood. It was 4 basswood, and they weren't the same trunk. But that wasn't where you're thinking of. Was not my original blind. My original blind was about 15 or 20 yards north and east.
Yeah.
And it was I took a block of firewood back there with me, and I stuck it in the crotch of this tree, this oak, so that I could stand up on it. It gave me 3-4 feet of elevation. And I was right between 3 trunks, so I could hide in there. And then you'd step down off of that into this area. There was another tree, like a smaller maple, and I put logs up. I made like a triangle. And it was funny because I'd be sitting there. I would spend the whole day in that blind. And the triangle, like where that maple tree was, where I had that was the bathroom, right? So if I had to go pee or something, I'd go right there.
Yeah.
And I'd be like peeing all morning in there. And I remember sitting there eating a sandwich, and you just see my head sticking out of the blind, and I hear some deer coming. I get my gun, I'm looking, and it's like 5 or 6 doe come down, and they go right by me, and they're stopping. They're like 3 feet away, and I'm like crouched down a little bit, so I'm just peeking over the top of the logs. Never saw me. I've been peeing there for 2 days. That was my second day, and they never, So it's funny. I see guys pee in a bottle, and I'm like, don't bother.
Yeah.
Doesn't bother them at all.
No.
But anyways, that's how I found that spot. And the first spot I just described to you, the very first day I hunted out there, it was like, okay, this is a journey, right? Because there's no four-wheelers now. I got to leave from the cabin, hike back. I got a backpack. Before that, nobody had backpacks, right? So I got a backpack. I had Girl Scout cookies, a couple, 2-3 sandwiches in there. I had all sorts of stuff, right? So I packed all this food, water, and I hiked all the way up in there. And I get in there, and right off the bat, at like shooting like 7:15 or whatever, I look, and here's a buck coming down that logging road on the other side of the creek. And it's 100 yards maybe,
Yeah.
90, 100 yards. So, and no scopes back then or nothing. But I shot him. I thought I missed him. I figured I'll take a shot, see what happens. I shot him. He turned around, ran back up the valley, and he's about as far away as I could still see him. And I see him plow right square head on into a tree and flip over dead. So I'm like, Jesus, I think I killed him. So I go down there, shot him right through, double lunged him. So I dressed him out. While I'm dressing him out, all these other deer started running off the south hill, and they're coming at me, and there was a small buck in there, and that was back when you could shoot 2 bucks.
Are we sure this was legal? Because this keeps coming up.
Legal as
Okay.
can be.
Okay.
Check the syllabus from 1987.
Can you Google that?
I'll Google it.
Okay.
But then I went back.
Statute of limitations.
Yeah, so I
is
went back
anyway.
up to the stand. I shot that at 7:30. I went back up to the stand at like 10 o'clock in the morning. I shot that big 8-point that hangs out there in the garage. And then after that, I never, here's the interesting thing with that spot. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but I never bow hunt that. I never go there. I would only hunt it like the first day of season, and then Thanksgiving, and then like the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And once in a while the last Saturday, but I'd hunt it 3 or 4 times a year, and I would go there before archery opened, and I would cut all the like saplings, and I would, if it needed any new wood. So I doctor it up in the summer, late summer, and then do not go there at all. I didn't want any human scent there at all. And then I would go in there opening morning, and I kill a buck every year there opening morning.
That's crazy.
So yeah, it was a great spot, and people would be like, I'd be dragging a buck coming out of the valley, and one of the other guys in the camp, and I'd run into them like, hey, can you give me a hand dragging this 200-pound deer out here? And they're like, no.
Yeah.
But do you mind if I sit in the blind? I'm like, go ahead, have at it.
Yeah.
But nobody else ever killed that thing out of there.
But you did end up passing that down to
Tony.
And
Yeah.
Tony killed out of
Yeah.
that area.
Yeah.
Killed
Yeah,
several
he did.
good bucks, right?
Yep.
Can you kill that thing again, or
Oh,
what happened? Because that's That's why I was sorry for
It's
the
all right if
listeners out there. The
yeah,
air
sorry
conditioner
about that.
kicked on.
If the baby sweats because it's too hot in the
It's
house,
fine.
so be
Your
it.
house is insulated very well. I'm sure it's like probably 66 degrees in there. It's why the thing just kicked on.
I just shut it off.
But there we go.
So, anyways, that's how I found the spot. And but I think if you did everything, if all things being equal, that spot doesn't work anymore because of the human presence. The land use has changed in a way that it's not the same.
No.
I can tell you, I found a spot that is the same.
The woods is developed. As far as it's grown, there hasn't been a lot of timber harvest in there, so there's not a lot of understory. So like the woods has changed quite a bit. I guess that leads to my question was going to be. I think you just answered it. Is that it's not what it used to be. So the property has evolved over the years, and the way the deer travel on the property over the years has changed. I mean, from your perspective, like our property, in my lifetime being up there and hunting, I feel like there is some consistency, even with the improvements that you and Uncle Mike have made to the woods as far as harvesting trees, and getting areas to thicken up on different levels of the property and food plots. Even with that, I feel like there's still like a level of consistency as to what happens every year to where the deer are, where they're hanging. Like, even though
it's
we've
geographic,
changed a lot,
and so, and you've only known it from your experience, right? Because before you remembered or you were up there,
there was no food
different.
plots. There was no
right, and there was quite honestly there was just as many deer.
Yeah, we're not making more deer.
No.
We're just making
we are attempting to hold more deer.
Yeah.
I don't have the acreage, right? We don't to actually believe that I'm a primary food source for them.
No.
I'm a stop-off point where they get a nibble on the way to an ag field somewhere.
Right.
Or, you know what I mean? Or we don't have oak ridges, when the acorns
on our property we don't.
No.
Our neighbors do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that, like, I think there's still the same by and large there's the same. Look at the buck one of the Nodos harvested this year on opening day. I mean, that was like incredible.
Yeah.
And that's not 150, 200 yards from my blind.
Yeah.
Right, so they're still there. But my take on that is, you can sit in that valley all day long and not see a deer cross the valley, but they used to cross the valley all the time, and they used to run up and down the valley. But the valley is, with different property owners, with different land use. I mean, there was logging that went on. A lot of roads got put in for the logging equipment. And let's face it, I mean, we drive the roads on our four-wheelers. The neighbors, the folks that own it, they drive it on their four-wheelers. But there was never any of that. If you were up there, you catch a deer completely off guard because nobody was ever in there.
Right.
It's too far back in. You couldn't go up the hill, and it was a hell of a drag back.
Yeah.
And I wish I knew what I knew now about, like I would have taken them apart and packed them out.
I know. Yeah, the quartering.
But nobody did that back then.
No. There still isn't many people that do it. Yeah, it's interesting. I think that's one of the things I'd love to get Uncle Mike on here, and I'd love getting Uncle Tim and Uncle Chris on too, to hear their stories and just, perspectives on things, because we all, Jimmy and I grew up, looking up to you guys, and you were our mentors and still are in many ways. But it's very interesting to hear from your guys' perspective, because there's so much stuff that, I'm very tuned in, and this is my passion right now. But I've been hunting since I was old enough to go with you.
Yeah.
And all the different experiences and things I've had, sometimes you don't realize you're learning when you're learning. Like, you're like, oh wow, I now I look back on this situation. It's like, this just happened, but I had no idea it happened. And it's like you're just not conscious about what's going on around you.
Right.
And I see all my friends that are getting into hunting at this later stage in life, and I kind of wonder if they're picking up on things differently than I would have when I was, 16 years old, or maybe 23 years old, when you're thinking about a million other things and you're not really obsessive over it. You're just out doing it.
Yeah, it might be from a maturity level, right?
Yeah.
If somebody's 30 years old, is the learning curve that younger hunter is so much in the moment.
Yeah.
They're not putting all the pieces together, or really thinking about the why. You know, as we get older, we think differently, right? And
Right.
so, you know, you wonder, have they got a long road ahead of them, or are they going to have an accelerated learning curve because they're a little wiser, a little more mature, you know?
And there's so much great content out there.
Oh, my God.
I mean, if you want to learn, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like turn a corner. You
Yeah.
know, and there's just the podcasts, the videos on YouTube, all these different people that have these programs out there to learn from them. It's like,
And I'll tell you, you gave some of the best advice the other night when you were talking about what a new hunter really needs to go afield, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to have a license. But aside from the license, what do you really need to go out and harvest a deer? You need a weapon and a knife to field dress it, you know, and you call them like
shit
camp
tickets.
money or shit tickets.
Yeah.
Right?
Toilet paper,
Right.
paper towel, something to wipe your hands or to wipe your nature.
Yep, and a roll of electrical tape in case you get hurt, right?
Right.
So, but really, that's all you need. And when I think back to when we started out, you know, you'd go to Walmart or Tractor Supply or something, and we used to go to Sears, and we would buy the one-piece, like, coveralls like you'd wear, like, on a construction job or on a farm. And I swear to God, I think we were better off because we had a farm, and you had calf feed and corn dust all over it and cattle. You know what I mean? So the things like, you know, I mean.
They don't think anything of what they're smelling. It smells like a farm.
But, I mean, we'd have, you know, we just had cheap old boots, snowmobile boots, and, you know, that's what we did. But really, the thing, one of the things I wanted to hit on, that it was a takeaway I had, because getting elevated and having the tree stand, and what are you going to use? Like, used to be screw-in steps, and it was tie-on steps. Now it's sticks, or ladder stand. If I use stands now, it's either a climber or a ladder. Really, just because of my age and everything, and it's, you know,
comfort and
comfort
safety and everything.
Yeah, from a safety standpoint. I mean, I'm not. If I fall now, it's going to not end well compared to when I was 30 years old.
Big trees
you know?
fall hard.
Yeah. But you don't need any of it. Like you said earlier, like, I'm trying to think. I haven't killed any of my wall hangers in a tree.
Yeah.
Not one. Every single one, I was on the ground.
Yep. It's interesting.
And I was either in a blind, or I was, like, on the move. Like, that last real big one I killed way back in the valley, we still hunted a huge area. I don't even know how I got back there. But somehow I ended up way back in the valley. No cell signal or nothing. I'm, like, way back in. I knew there was a buck up on the move, a big one. And I knew he wanted to cross that valley, but I knew he didn't want that. My suspicion was he wouldn't do it till dark. So I got in a position where I felt the valley was very tight. And I'm like, there's no way he can cross without me seeing him.
Yep.
And so I'm just going to stay here. And so I stayed there, and I moved a couple times. I moved a couple spots. And then it started getting dark, and it was lightly snowing and everything. And I'm like, all right, the day's over. But I still had shooting light, but I'm like, I should. These guys got to be, like, way far gone. So I start. I wanted to leave, but I didn't want to turn my back on a spot. True story. So I walked backwards. I was on this logging road, and I would take one step backwards, and then I kept watching, and I would take another step backwards. I'm going to back out of this area because I'm like, God, there was something told me he was going to cross.
Yeah.
So I go back like 10 steps backwards, and I'm watching. There's a lower pond, and there's a berm, and I catch movement coming off the south hill, and I grab my binoculars, and I pull them up, and I'm watching, and I can see horns, big horns, right? And I figure, so I didn't want to move because I was afraid he would catch me, bust me moving, right? So I drop down, take a knee. I figure he's going to cross on the berm at the head of the pond. And he doesn't. That son of a gun got over the berm. So it's almost like he knew I was there. And you could just see his horns going across. And he crossed the berm, and then I'm like, I'm going to take him right when he goes up the hill. So I'm ready to take him. I'm kneeling down. I got the crosshairs on him. And as soon as he starts to come up out, he turns to the left and walks straight away. And I'm like, you son of a biscuit.
That's such a classic thing. You hear that all the time.
So I'm just watching him. And he keeps going. And he's going slow, methodical, like big bucks do. And then all of a sudden he decides he's going up the hill. And he turns and starts up the hill. So I'm looking up the hill above him, and there's, it gets some nice hardwoods there. And it's an open spot. So I get up to that open spot, and he comes and he's on the move. I don't know, he's probably 100, 115 yards away with a shotgun. And he's going right up the hill, and so I touch one off, and then I pump another round, and I ran. I got up and I ran down to where he crossed, and I stopped and I dropped and took a knee again because I didn't know where he went. I knew he went running up, but I didn't know if I hit him. And all of a sudden I hear it crash, and I look, and here he is circling down the hill, coming back down by the berm, hits the ground, and comes right straight at me. And then it was like 20 yards away. He realized I was there, and so I ended up getting him, but I hit him right through the lungs
on the first shot.
On the first shot. But it was so amazing because, like, that buck, I mean, did he know I was there? Was he winding me? Did he? I don't. Or was he just waiting?
He may have seen you down there, watching from the other side of the hill, and like you said, he waited until it was almost dark, and he knew he had to make a move because Jimmy was right above him. If I remember correctly, Jimmy was coming down the hill. He had already filled his buck tag, and Jimmy had seen him.
That was like an hour before, so he came down. And
it was almost like he
this
staged.
is what they do. They'll stage. They come down, and there's a knob up on past the pond. As soon as you go through and you look up to your right, there's a knob. There's an old logging road that goes up to that knob. And I'll guarantee you they come down that draw right by the edge of the knob, and he was hanging right up on that knob because that's where he came down. Mm-hmm. And I do think that because they know there's a lot of activity in the valley that they hang back. And I'm trying to think. I think 4 of them, counting him, there's 4 bucks that I've killed as they staged hanging out at that level up high, like not quite wanting to come down, checking everything out. So I killed an 11, a 9, that other 9 I just told you about, and then a big 8 doing that.
Yeah.
But they will actually, those big deer move so slow it will drive you crazy.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you don't see them move. You just look up, and you'll say, is that a horn, or is that an ear, or is that a tail? And I look up on the hill, and it is. And then you watch it, and it's a deer, and they're standing there like a statue. And then you're like, geez, am I seeing things?
Yeah.
You know? Like that 11 point was like that. He was standing there like a statue. And I didn't have a great pair of binoculars, but I had good enough binoculars to tell that was a hell of a buck. And he's standing up above me up there, and every once in a while you'd see his tail flicker or something. But so the patience there, you know what I mean? A lot of guys don't have the patience to. I almost turned around and walked away, and I'm like, I know it's going to happen. I hate to leave. I want to.
That's interesting. So you wanted to leave, but you're like, I'm going to keep watching this as I back out of here.
Yep.
So you were walking backwards to watch your back trail, essentially.
I was in some trees, and there's an old logging road that runs along the base of the North Hill, and it dead ends there right by that lower pond. And so I stepped out onto that logging road, and I looked, and there was no logs, and everything was clear. So I go, I'm just going to take one step at a time real slow and back out of here. And like I said, I went, I don't know, 10 steps or something. And all of a sudden I caught movement, and he's coming down. I'm like, you son of a gun. Did he think I was leaving?
That's crazy.
You know what I mean? If you think about the deer, he sees me leaving. But, he doesn't know whether I'm facing him or turned away, right? Most people
he just
walk
sees that whatever that object or threat is there is backing out.
Yeah, you want to talk about lucky. Well, it was a lucky day for Willie right there.
Yeah, that was fun because almost everybody was, the whole gang was there.
Yeah.
That was pretty special because that was the only time that I can think of that Jimmy and I, with your big bucks you've shot, that him and I were both there with you. Most of your big bucks were shot before him and I were either out hunting or we just weren't there with you, when it happened. So that was cool because we were all kind of involved in that, that hunt.
It was funny because I worked that deer so long that we were still hunting the side hills. So I don't know. We had, I don't know how many guys. There might have been half a dozen of us, 6 or 7 of us. Wes was there. All you boys, Mike. Joel. So we had the gang, right? But we're all spread out. I mean, you're just like nobody sees each other. We're just in the wood. We know it's like you. So I get this deer, and it's like I got this big buck down. I'm like, it's dark. Now it's getting. So I'm like, I got to get some help out here. So I got no cell phone. So I had to walk all the way back and then take the logging road that goes up towards the 5 points and climb up halfway up that logging road till I got signal.
Yeah.
To call you guys to tell you I got a big deer, bring a 4-wheeler, I need a dust off, So.
Need a dust off, yeah.
So, yeah, and then the whole crew came.
Yeah.
They came in force.
Yeah,
you guys almost beat me back to the deer.
Yeah,
I had to walk all the way back to the deer.
It was cold that day. I remember I was up. I think I was.
You were on the point.
I was on the point. I was one of the sitters, and I was on the point. And yeah, so that's like the beauty of, we're of hunting camp is just those memories, those stories. But
Yeah.
I find it interesting to kind of understand the back end of, how you pick these spots. And I think, for any hunter, but especially a new hunter, when you're trying to figure out all of these questions that you have about what to do getting started, is don't overthink it, because I think a lot of times it's just natural to do that, to overthink it, think you need all this high tech gear and all this stuff, and at the end of the day, you really don't need it. You can find a pile of logs, you can find a spot where you can set up and hunt from the ground and have just as good of an opportunity to kill a whitetail as you would otherwise. How's it flowing over there, Willie? Free flowing.
I got good flow for an old guy.
That's good. Means your prostrate's working. I guess I might as well drain her real quick. Oh, that felt good.
Back with you.
We're back. We're both drained and happy.
We can
So,
go,
yeah,
we can go another 2-3 hours.
We can, yeah. I mean, we're only halfway through.
So, when I was in the bushes there, you were saying that not to be afraid to hunt a deer from the ground, right?
Yeah.
So, I will tell you that the guy that's hiding in the bushes for the deer nowadays is the anomaly, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's in a tree. But I have had some of my most amazing hunts on the ground. And I think that sometimes we become too obsessive about, like I think about some of the land conservancy property that we hunt, or like I used to go back into Adirondack bear hunting, and I was like, okay, what stand am I going to take? How am I going to care? How many steps will I need? I got to set up something. You really don't have to. It's kind of nice, but a lot of game, a lot of hunters are extreme. You go out west.
Yeah.
Does anybody use a tree stand?
No. No.
Right. So, but so for new guys, here's my advice to the new guys. Don't worry, because you add a whole nother level of challenge and complexity and cost, right? When you talk about, I got to get a stand, am I going to get a ladder, a climber, a saddle, what am I going to do? Don't worry about it. Go hunting, right? And just worry about, being proficient with your weapon, having comfortable clothes so you can go out and enjoy the experience. And really just go out and, if you find an area like you're walking along and there's a tree blowed down and it's overlooking a nice draw and you're like, it's beautiful here, sit down. Just sit down, settle in, kick the leaves away. That's how like a lot of my deer have ended up in the freezer, right?
Yeah.
Because I was like, this is a beautiful spot, or I knew a spot that I liked. I'm like, and like that on the point there was a big, huge log down there, and there's a tree there. I'm like, just put a seat on that tree or whatever. And
Yeah, you set that up for me. That's got to be 15 years ago anyway, if not longer. You set that spot up, and that's still
it's still usable.
It's still usable.
Yeah. So it's I think like I know when I started, I didn't have to worry about any of that. And when you started, you had me worrying about it for you, right? I'd get a ladder stand. We started all you guys in ladder stands, and then, you would borrow my baby grand or something, and you started like, so now my stuff is now all your stuff because I don't use it anymore. But the point being, like if you're a new guy starting out, you're Jeff Jones starting out, and just cross that off the list for now. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Yeah.
You took
Connor
McGregor, right? Was it Connor? No, who was it?
That's okay.
Connor Holly.
How long you been drinking for?
All afternoon. So, but you and Connor Holly went out. Didn't he shoot that? You guys were just still hunting.
It was the only day him and I have ever hunted together.
Yeah.
And it took us like 4 hours, and we
on the ground
got him a deer. Yeah.
And you know what? That 4 hours.
And I'm not saying it would be that easy every time we go out.
No.
But it was just a perfect day to be on the ground hunting. If you get snow,
that was a nice day.
I'm sorry, but if you get snow, I mean, I've sat tree stands during gun season in the snow, but almost, especially if you're in an area where you've got topography, where you've got hills and terrain to work with, just boots on the ground and just still hunt. Find some tracks.
So this is the other thing a lot of guys don't understand. When you hear, like, you can listen to the podcast, but guys might not put it together. It's a different deer behavior throughout the season, right? So if the deer, like, they're on the move, they're up feeding, when all the leaves are on, it's like late September, early October, and then they're very active and up and moving early, and they got cover, right? And they're not stressed because they don't have cold weather. The weather's nice. Then you work into the rut, and there's a bit of a frenzied activity. You see all sorts of stuff going, and right in the middle of the day, a buck's likely to walk. You don't know, right?
Yeah.
But then you get towards, that the 10th of November, Thanksgiving, you're full leaf off. Breeding is done.
Or very, there might be just random.
There's some
hot
breeding going on
does that are
because you
coming
can
in.
still have some rut activity in December.
But for the most part, to your point.
But
yes.
right, the peak is gone, right? So, but what happens is everything changes, right? Because now the deer, as it gets colder, what does a deer need to do? It needs to conserve energy. It's not going to be like traveling all over the hill. It's going to bed relatively close to a food source, conserve its energy, stay warm, right? It doesn't want to be like moving like it moves in August or September.
Yeah.
Because they'll expend too much energy. And the bucks, they got to rebuild. They got to put fat back on. They'll run. You can have a buck, run off 20, 30, 40 pounds during the rut.
In a couple-week period.
They'll run themselves almost some, on a severe winter, some might not survive the winter. So, they're going to look at the high, they're going to be in the acorns, just feeding on the acorns, and they're going to be bedded nearby because they don't want to walk very far. And so if you're sitting in a stand where it was really hot, on Halloween, you might not see a deer all day long. And if they're not there, they're not coming to you because they're all laying still.
Right.
So, we change up there the way, everybody does it differently. But, what we do is we break off and we're still hunting. Like a lot of times on our own or looking for a track, or we know where the deer will tend to bed. We sneak in, look at areas.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing you were on a hunt on a beautiful December day. I think it was December, wasn't it?
With Connor?
With Connor.
No, that was the Friday after
no?
Thanksgiving.
Okay, so it was gorgeous.
Yeah.
Sunshine, blue sky, snow. We had a good snow
We had
that year.
a bunch of snow, yeah.
And the deer has face buried in the snow. I killed one like that too on the back of the South Hill. I'm still hunting along, and I catch the back of a deer, and I keep sneaking up.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing's got his head buried in 1.5 feet of snow. I felt bad for him.
Digging
Never
for
knew it hit him.
acorns. Yeah. But there's a lot to be said for that, and I think if you have once it does get to that point in gun season, get on the ground and go find some tracks, and almost if you can find a hillside where you can be above where you suspect the deer either bedded or feeding, you can almost always, especially during the day, if in most situations, this is one of the things I've learned from hunting out west is you almost always have thermals are carrying the wind up the hill, and if you can be above them and you've got, you don't have, let's say you're on the side of the hill, like on our hill, you're on the east-facing slope and you've got a west wind that might be blowing the wind down, and maybe that's, taking the thermals, but you're getting some air down the hill. Taking into consideration, you got to pay attention to where your wind is.
But generally, right, your thermals are up.
If you can stay above them and you have those spots and just edge along, I mean, it is a really fun way to hunt. And
that's awesome.
I'm going to have a guy on the podcast in a couple weeks from the Adirondacks. He's part of the Big Woods Bucks team out of Maine, but
Nice.
he lives in the Adirondacks or hunts the Adirondacks. Mark's his name, and he sent me his book. He's got a book about his journey learning how to be a big buck tracker, and I'm just kind of starting into the book. I'm about like maybe the first chapter in, him just kind of laying the groundwork, but I can already tell this book just seems fascinating, and it just makes me think that's my favorite part. I love the rut. I love archery. It's fun, but when I can put the gun in my hand and I can just leave the cabin or drive to the public land and just start walking,
right?
I love it.
Just still hunt all
and
day.
I love shooting does like that.
Yeah.
Like big bucks, great. But like that doe I shot at the Nature Conservancy a couple years ago when I was like 1.5 miles from the truck,
that or farther,
all by myself, nobody with me. That was like my little backcountry hunt,
Yeah.
I dragged that deer back. I could have quartered it, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to drag this doe. I'm like, it's just like a pride thing, you know? I'm way the hell away from the truck. Got to go downhill. I'm over blowdowns. There's no trail except for when you get to that main road. It was a freaking blast. But like getting out there and just getting boots on the ground.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things there's a few podcasts that talk about it, but the majority of podcasts that I listen to anyway are just, it's all about archery. Archery.
Yeah.
And archery's great, but archery's challenging. And not everybody's going to get into it and right off the bat be okay with, if you're watching TV, you assume that you can go out anywhere in the country and shoot a 140-inch deer your first time out. It's not reality.
Right.
It's just not. And especially here in New York, I mean, you're shooting a 2.5-year-old every year, you're doing all right.
Yeah.
Like, it's not easy. But the point I'm making there is, be okay with being excited about getting a 12 gauge and going out and hunting. And, except for this year, I was just talking to Joel tonight. If you're a new hunter this year, number one, it might be challenging to get a weapon to take hunting.
Yeah.
Because guns are selling like freaking hotcakes. Number two, like actual shotgun slugs are like, you can't find them. You can find rifle ammo. Like, I've been buying stuff for my 7 mag, but like, I'm not seeing anything on the shelf for 12 gauge or for 20 gauge. So, I guess take that into consideration too as you're trying to figure out what you're going to hunt with. But I don't know. I'm kind of squirreling here. I'm all over the place.
So you're talking about, the shotgun and the availability, ammo and everything. And so I got an old 30-30 downstairs, a Savage pump. I don't know if you remember that gun or not, but
yeah.
So that gun, I got like 3 whole boxes of 30-30 ammo, and I last I don't know, a couple of years I've used that 30-06 at 760, that pump.
Yeah.
And I'm not using that anymore. That's too much gun for these whitetails. I want to get away from, like, the shotgun works really good, but I've killed like literally probably 100 or over 100 deer with that gun.
Yeah.
And not that I love the gun, but it's like, I just want to try something different. My eyesight isn't what it used to be. I got some better optics on my muzzle loader, my 30-06. So, but anyways, I'm gonna break out that 30-30. So I've been looking at ballistic charts. So I've been looking at the 6.5 Creedmoor, a 243, because I wanted to try something lighter. So I was thinking a 243 or a 270.
Yeah.
And I can't remember which one it was. I think it was a 270. It's a screaming round, super fast.
Really fast, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, a lot of times speed equates to foot-pounds of energy. And I think I'm hitting the deer, like if I'm shooting 180 grain, 30-06, that, I shoot a deer, like last year's deer was, 25 yards? You know what I mean? I mean, there's 1,900 pounds of foot-pounds of energy hitting that deer, you know what I mean? It's like, I want something to eat. I don't want to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I got looking, and the 30-30 is really, for what I hunt in Naples, all my shots are under 100 yards unless, I've killed a couple that are way out there, but that's unusual.
Yeah.
But that 30-30, I think I'm gonna try that. That was a gun that a guy gave me. He was dying. He had cancer. He was my tire vendor. And I can remember the guy. I can remember what he looked like in the truck he drove, but I can't remember his name. But he used to love to talk to me about hunting. I was a head mechanic at Penfield. And he had gotten cancer, and he was terminal, and he came to see me, and he said, I got this gun, and I know how much you love to hunt, and none of my kids, nobody in my family hunts, and he goes, I want this to go to you, and think of me and all the special memories, the stories we shared and everything. So I'm like, well, I got to pay him. No, I want you to have it. So anyways, I got this gun, right, and then, I don't know, one of the guys at the fire hall, 15 years later, is bugging me, he wanted to buy that gun. So I sold it to him. Then after I sold it, I'm like, what did I ever do that for? The only thing I ever shot was a woodchuck with it. I shot a woodchuck once. So anyways, he was hard up for money, and so he called me. He's like, you want to buy that gun back? So I ended up buying it back. So I've got it. So I think I'm going to deer hunt with it.
Nice.
It's a short little thing. It's a brush gun,
Yeah.
But there's probably been more white-tailed deer killed in New York State Adirondacks with a 30-30 than anything else,
Yeah, it's super popular.
So I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going with the 30-30 this year. I got
That's cool.
some scopes downstairs. I got to get them mounted up and get it bore sighted. And
Cool.
yep, gonna be sporting that thing this year. That'll be fun.
That will be fun.
Yeah.
Something different.
Yep. And it's like I always thought I might try a handgun, but I don't think so.
No.
Nope. Gonna try that, and then the muzzle loader. The muzzle, Mike, that's all he uses. And you hit him right, and he hits him right, and there's not a lot of meat loss.
No.
But I'll tell you, I do all the skinning and taking them apart in a butcher shop here, and
Yeah.
these guys that are using, even the 7 mil,
Oh, Jesus.
6.5 Creedmoor.
7 mag is a freaking. It's
It's
way too much of a round for a deer.
So I'm taking
it's-
these things apart, and I got to deal with the loss, the meat loss. And I'm doing the same thing, right? I mean, I've shot the last, I don't know, $3, and a bear with even that bear. I mean, Jesus, you put my hand right through the hole I left in the thing. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like too much.
That's
It'd probably
why.
great if I'm out hunting moose,
Well, yeah,
but it's like
Yeah.
for these close-up type situations I get into,
it's not necessary.
it's too much gun.
But I mean, even the 12 gauge. I mean, some of the 12 gauge, the 20 gauge is really, as far as a shotgun goes, is probably the ideal shotgun for a deer gun.
yeah,
It's lighter and it's not going to do as much damage. But I've had some of my shotgun kills have been worse damage than my 7 mag kills. And some of that might be where I hit the deer, but I would say, but that's where I've gotten into. It sounds gruesome, but I've gotten into the headshots and shooting them that way the last couple of years. And my God, I've
well, you sure don't ruin any meat.
I don't ruin any meat.
But I got to tell you, I've just never. I got an 8-point that's hanging out there in the garage.
Yeah.
There was a guy that, one of our guys used to like to shoot him in the neck so he didn't ruin any meat.
Right.
And because of that, he's hanging on my wall, not his wall.
Yeah.
If he'd shot him behind the front shoulder, he'd have been.
Yeah.
He never would have came to me. You know what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying 100%. That's I don't know. I haven't obviously I'm not gonna shoot a buck in the head, but with a doe, I've the last few years pretty much not every doe I've shot with my rifle, but most of them have been headshots, and they just outdone over.
It's
no
very
track
humane.
job.
If you hit him right, it's very humane.
Well, either you hit him or you don't hit him.
Right.
I mean, and especially with a 7 mag. I mean, even if you don't hit him perfect, there's so much energy there.
It's over.
It's over. But from the humanity side of it, it's but yeah. So I don't know. It's fun. I can't wait for what the season brings, and it's going to be interesting. I think I'm going to try to be pretty conservative. I say that now, and I guess I say that every year, but this year I'm going to try to be, and I'm going to say this publicly probably more than once so that I can try to hold myself accountable. But not hunting so much in the morning early in the season, because Brian and I especially, we get so excited when the season gets here that we're like, yeah, we're not going to hunt mornings, and then it's like opening day or opening weekend, and we're like, all right, you going out tomorrow morning, Saturday morning? It's like, yep, I'll meet you there at the farm at 5:30 or whatever, and it's just that's a lot when you got the young kids at home.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to focus, especially during October, just hunting evenings, a couple nights a week, and trying to take it easy on Sarah, so I'm not burning the bridge at home.
Be there for the kids in the morning. And
yeah. What's your expectations for the season? I mean, you haven't really probably spent much time at all thinking about it.
No, archery is. I don't know. Even if I don't get that bow to a shop, shot good when I put it in a box. I'll probably shoot fine. In the case, I'll get it out, and it's funny. Every year I go through all I got all these different mix of arrows, and I check them out and get the ones that shoot the best. And I hit a deer last year. I didn't get her, but I think that was more my fault than anything. But no, I'll think I'll hunt, but I don't know what it's going to look like with respect to the work and everything. So
yeah,
I definitely want to. I want to get out with a bow. Last year I wanted to take some vacation time with you guys, and work was just too crazy. I couldn't get away. That's really my passion, is to get out there in some really nice weather, or even if it's cold weather, but like that Halloween time.
Yeah.
So, and I'd really want to get one with my bow again this year.
Yeah.
And then with gun, I do want to hit it harder and hope for a better season. I mean, last year it was funny. I shot the buck I shot, and that if I had waited the next day, I had, you talk about saddles. I got a spot that I set up on top of the South Hill that
I'm just thinking
that I hope to get into. But I'm hoping things will be better. But it's just such a tough time of our.
Was it? Yeah, because last year you shot that buck, and then that Sunday you hunted, and then I think Grandpa had issues, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it health issues? And then you basically didn't hunt the whole rest of the season.
Yeah.
I
didn't make it up for Thanksgiving. I was I stayed with them. We ended up having to sell their house. We relocate them.
Yep.
Moved them. I mean, my whole season was done. That was it. You know, I think I made it. I made it out the Sunday. Was it the Sunday after Thanksgiving when we had the ice storm? Mike and I fell down the mountain.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Which I thought
that may be the last time I hunted.
I thought you were full of shit. And then I don't know when it was, when you and I, when we went up there and we cut wood that day. It was after season. We went up there, and I went up on the point to get my camera,
Yeah.
and I had my snowshoes on, and I couldn't go anywhere. I tried to stand up, and my feet would go right from underneath me because it was just leaves and then ice.
Yeah, it was terrible.
I couldn't, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, I know what Dad and Uncle Mike were talking about. I'm like, this is extremely dangerous.
I looked at if you look at on that hill, they have the lines on the topo map. I think it was like over 200, almost 300 feet. I fell down that hill. It's a miracle that him and I got up and walked out of there.
Amazing.
But I mean, we were beat up and sore, but our guns took a beating. But I mean, I just cannot believe I made it all the way down that hill, and I had scars, and you saw the bruises I had. It was beat. But I mean, I going down the hill, I'm thinking, they're going to have to bring wildlife, or the search and rescue in to get us out of here or something,
Yeah.
But it was. I have a whole new respect for that hill. I've been on that hill my whole life. I never had anything like that.
Ice is no joke.
No, and there was you couldn't go up, you couldn't go across, in retrospect, I probably should have broke out. I got some cord, like some parachute cord in my pack, and I should have
tied yourself to a tree around your neck or something.
But I mean, somehow I would have had to. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know what else. I don't know. I know how to handle myself when I fall on that hill. I've been doing it for my entire life.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you what, man. I think I took years off the heels of those boots. I had them dug in so hard there was rocks and shit flying everywhere. I had my heels dug in, and then when I'd line up with a tree and I'm moving. I'm fast. I'm like, if I hit that tree, I'm gonna break a leg.
Yeah.
Or shatter something. Jeez. It was, oh my God, that was terrible.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys got off the hill okay.
Mike was cussing and swearing, as you can imagine.
I can imagine.
Of course, when we get to the bottom of the hill and it was an absolute disaster and his gun got knocked around and, his cherished muzzleloader, he was hot. And it was my fault because it was my idea to go down that way.
Of course. Yeah.
It's not a good day.
No.
We're the only two people.
You were the only guys there. Yeah.
Nobody else would go hunting in a winter storm warning for an ice storm. We're like, you want to go? Yeah, sure, I'll go.
Yeah. I got a couple free hours.
Yeah.
Let's go try to kill ourselves. That's funny.
And we both get to the bottom of the hill, and there's a buck standing there looking at us. I mean, I had already had a buck, and his gun was packed full of snow and wouldn't work. But
right.
Mine wouldn't work either, but I already had a buck. So, yeah, it was unbelievable. I could not believe the deer we saw that day. I think we just went up there for the afternoon. It was so bad that we stayed in the cabin until 1, and we were back there by 4:30. And I think I saw 2 bucks and probably 8 or 9 does and missed one.
Wow.
And fell down a mountain. So
you did it all that day.
I did it all. And then Mike smashed his car against the telephone pole because we couldn't get it out. Remember that? We went down to the garage to leave, and I had my truck, and he had his Equinox, and Equinox is only front-wheel drive. So I said, I'll bust a path. And so I drove out, and then I said, I'll wait on the road and make sure you get out. And so he got up, and he couldn't quite get up into the road. So he's backing back down, and, of course, everything's ice. And he slid off and hit that telephone pole that's on the north side of the driveway, put his car right against that, ripped the mirror off the driver's door, dented it.
Holy shit, I didn't know that.
I'm standing out on County Road 36, and I can hear him going off down there. I'm like, oh, God. So I went down there. He was like, yeah. So then, and there's no place on his car to hook on and tow out. So I'm trying to push him, but I mean, I couldn't even stand up. It was so slippery. So we just kept trying, and I backed in again, and I went in and out a couple times with my truck to chew it up. And so, anyways, long story short, he finally got out of there, had his driver's side rearview mirror in the back seat, and big dent in the driver's door.
Jesus.
And we were both all bruised up, and our guns were all screwed up, and we're like, yeah, good hunt. See you next weekend.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was a winner. I left, and your mother's like, you be careful. Don't you get hurt. Oh, my God.
Well, there's, of course, a million other things we could chat about. But that's probably a fair spot to wrap her up.
That's a fair wrap-up.
It was just a classic BS session. I had really no agenda what to talk about. Yep. So it was a fun chat.
Yeah, it was a
fun
fun
chat. Was there anything we didn't hit on your little agenda?
We hit on it
there?
all. We got it all. Yep. In one way, shape, or form, we hit on all the.
That's
good.
I
just had a couple things on there. So
we'll have to do this again because there's other stuff I want to talk about. So
yeah,
we'll do it again for sure
I
once
look
we get a
forward
little
to
bit closer to season. So.
Yep.
appreciate you being a subscriber to the podcast and supporting me.
I'm a big promoter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I give you 5 stars.
Dude,
I'm going to give this one 5 stars.
You should. You should give yourself
I will.
an anonymously, talk about how great the episode was. But yeah, it's been fun that the podcast is, it's growing. We're a year in now, and anybody who does a podcast really says, staying consistent with it, and we're by no means where I'd like to see it be listener wise. We're still, we have our
Is it just
ups
us
and
still?
downs. Yeah, it's just the 6 of us that are listening, but. I keep joking about that, but I mean the numbers are growing,
Yeah.
and I'm really excited to see what this hunting season brings because, I hope that what we're doing with the podcast and doing the interviews with local hunters that had success the prior week, we're going to
That was
really,
a lot of fun. The Breeding Them Radio.
It's great. I think it's great, and the feedback I've gotten is that people really enjoy it. Now turkey hunting, Breeding Them Radio, I think we're going to change that to called Story Time with Jim.
Yeah, that'd
With
be
Big
appropriate.
Jim,
Yeah.
because Judas Priest, those episodes could have been 40 minutes long, but they're like 2 hours, and you'd be like, well, this one time I cracked 6 beers, and then I chased this turkey till it was dark, and then next thing. So Jimbo is
I never realized Jimmy was such a storyteller.
hilarious, and they're all
Yeah.
strangers. Most of these people he's
Yeah.
never met before, no idea. I'm like, Jimmy, would you mind doing this for me? I'm having a baby this month. He's like, oh yeah, I'll try it, and
Yeah.
it's like freaking
It was
natural.
great.
But I'm really hoping that this deer season that things can, go to the next level for us with the podcast. And again, our focus is we want to educate, we want to help people, we want to be entertaining. We're real, we're regular people. We don't have any like monetary sponsors. This is all paid for out of my pocket. We sell some hats and that not making money doing that. I sold hats and then I went and placed another order. And I'm paying, I didn't make enough from the first batch to buy the second batch. That's not so like
Really having fun and just promoting the outdoors.
and just sharing it. I think we have so much great stuff to offer here in Western New York in our outdoors scene that I just want to highlight that and share what we're doing. So I appreciate everybody who's listening. I hope we continue to grow, and that's all that this is really. That's all we're really trying to do here is just entertain. I love having these conversations. I love doing this. If I could sit here, this what you and I have done for this last hour and a half is exactly what we don't do when we're together. When we're
if
here,
we weren't doing this, we'd be in there watching baseball, playing with our phones,
falling asleep on the couch.
Yeah.
And instead, we have an hour and 40-minute conversation where we're 100% engaged with each other.
Yeah.
And this is the same thing I get doing these podcasts with these other people that a lot of them I have no idea who they are. I know that they own a bow shop or that they have
their own podcast.
They have a podcast or a fitness. They own a training company. Doing fitness stuff like the Gary Dubs I just had on yesterday. I met the guy in the mountains of Colorado last year. He ended up staying 2 nights with us at camp.
Really?
But he basically, we invited him. He was hunting solo. And we're like, hey, do you want to stay at camp with us? This is the first night in. He's like, yeah, sure. So he camped there. We sat around the fire and chatted for a few minutes. The first night. Second night, same thing. And we exchanged contact info when we all left camp on Sunday morning. And I've just stayed in touch with him on Instagram. So yesterday I just did a Zoom podcast with him.
Oh, nice.
And it's like, what a great dude.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's what I love about this. I'm like meeting all these people and talking to all these people that I would never interact with. And it's just, I could just go on and on. Like, I'm loving this. This is so much fun. Obviously, I love to talk. It's it's what I do. I talk.
It's not just Jimmy.
No.
It's a Harvey thing.
It is a Harvey thing. Yeah. Story time with Slick Willy. Yeah. So it's good stuff. I appreciate your support, and thanks for planting my tree because the apple didn't fall too far from it.
No, it didn't. So,
yeah, it's good times.
When I think back, I'll close with, I remember when we used to watch these videos of VHS up at hunting camp. Remember that? Mm-hmm. With Michael Wydell and who was
Okay, you were saying Michael Waddell, batteries just died. Oh my God, terrible timing.
So we used to watch all the videos, remember? And this reminds me of because we used to joke around and say that we could have our own hunting show. Remember that? It'd be called Just Hunting or something like that, and just like so. And we used to laugh about it and joke. And you guys even made videos. You made the squirrel slam.
Yep.
Remember? Instead of,
Gargantuan squirrels.
gargantuan
Instead of monster
squirrels.
bucks, it was
Yeah.
gargantuan squirrels.
and it was actually a
That's-
heck of a video.
Fun fact, that's all being converted to digital right
Is it?
now. I
Oh,
sent
my
that
God.
stuff back with the stuff we did for Mom for
Yeah.
her birthday. Yeah.
So
we'll-
it's funny that, having the podcast now, having you and Jimmy like involved in this and taking it to this level, I think back to when you guys were teenagers and we'd watch that, and we always gargantuan squirrels, the videos you were making.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it was just
hey,
me and my cousins going out squirrel hunting while you guys were all out deer hunting.
Yeah.
We had the video camera and we just went out and shot chipmunks and squirrels.
So
that's
hey,
what
all
it's
good
all
stuff,
about.
man.
It is.
Yep.
Thanks, Willie.
All right. Thank you.
Checking out.
Great chat.
Thanks
We'll
for
see ya.
feeding them with me.
Fading them.
Feeding them.